WWE are planning some major NXT changes and possibly adding a fourth brand. Plus, a Raw star wants another WWE title added, and a rare gimmick match has been pitched for SummerSlam. It's all in the wrestling news right now. Potentially some intriguing but seismic changes to the landscape of WWE as it pertains to NXT. Nick Khan, WWE CEO, was speaking to The Hollywood Reporter and laid out some of those said changes.
He did. He said initially NXT was on WWE Network, and then when the pandemic hit, USA/NBCU needed content. We did not miss a week of production. So we went with Tuesday nights NXT on USA from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. NXT ratings are also trending up, so that is going in the right direction.
We think NXT has the viability to be its own standalone brand instead of just being a developmental system. A third brand, if you will, where you can see crossover from our superstars on Raw and SmackDown to NXT while our young talent develops there. Once we've got all of that situated, then we will look at other nights of the week to develop new content as well. Oh. So this winds back to pre-pandemic, I would say, where there was a general consensus that NXT was being treated as a third brand. I think in these videos, in the before times, we had arguments on whether going to NXT was a move down or a move across.
Yes.
And it very much became a move down
Yes.
when Vince McMahon came in and sort of hard reset NXT in 2021. And it became like the color splat era. And it very much became then the developmental brand. We've seen it slowly start to creep back up as a more established brand.
I'd say so.
How far do you think it's off from its heyday?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's somewhere in the middle. It's definitely. I was going to say it definitely feels more absurd, even though there was still lots of absurd things that happened in the black and gold era as well of NXT. But it definitely feels a lot more child friendly almost, if you catch my drift, if that makes any sense, along with the colors and maybe some of the storylines and things like that as well, and some of the characters portrayed on there. I think though, I mean, it seems as though WWE do want to push it into it. So, I mean, it already is its own separate thing, but they want to push it in more of that direction. We've seen things happen now with some of the free agents pop up, and obviously now Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker happening too. I can see them doing a lot more of that crossover.
We did talk about that match in our previous news video today, and a big reason behind it is upping the numbers for NXT and making it a bit more must-see than it has been over the past few years. And in doing so, to that end, there is the hope that when the rights for the TV show comes up again, they can ask for more money to show it. And by presenting it as a third brand to Raw and SmackDown, you want to make as much money from it as you would Raw and SmackDown. So there is a method to all of this in terms of how they're positioning it. And as Nick Khan says there is still a requirement for a place to go for superstars to grow. So the idea of, as he says here, other nights to develop new content, possibly becoming a fourth show. Now, currently we've got NXT Level Up.
Yes.
I would wonder whether they would be thinking in terms of making a fourth brand something that's a bit bigger than that concept. Yeah. If you see what I mean.
What about NXT Europe though as well? Would that have been its own separate thing?
Don't mention NXT Europe.
Sorry, I ushered the.
I think I said it once, but I got away with it. It's all gone very quiet.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it?
On the European front there, I would say.
But maybe that's it. Maybe Level Up then becomes more of the developmental brand than NXT does. Before as well, when I said it feels more child friendly, I literally just thought when I said that we had Dijak and Ilya Dragunov going at it in a pretty brutal affair, so I might not have been right in saying child friendly. But
too late
still,
now. They've already told you off in the comments.
Told me.
It's too late.
It has bits of both. Like I said before, I think it is very much in between somewhat.
Now the plans to move the roster around do continue. There's going to be more cross promotion of talent between NXT, Raw, and SmackDown as well, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah. So sorry, my brain just went.
You were thinking about Dragunov and Dijak.
I was then for for a second.
It was a good
back
match,
on track. It
to
was a
be
very
fair.
good match. I'm back on track. So this comes from Works Wrestling as well. Sorry. So they say, with Nick Khan hoping to solidify WWE NXT as a major third brand, expect tie-ins in the near future, such as Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker for the World Heavyweight Championship, as well as NXT tag teams getting mixed in with main roster matches, which makes sense to me because there's some phenomenal tag teams in NXT.
Yeah, and the first time I think we've seen tag teams mentioned very deliberately as involved in possible moving around and free agency. We've seen singles wrestlers make appearances and debuts, but not so much tag teams.
And it makes sense. I think that we've spoke about this multiple times already on the news, but like the tag team division within WWE feels a lot more fleshed out than it did like a couple of years ago at this point. And I believe as well, oh my God, the Creed brothers on the main roster with some of the tag teams there.
That
give us
would
that.
be sensational.
Yes,
Better
please.
yet, shoes off if you want Gibson and Drake on the main roster.
Which we do. I'm going to take
Flipping well do.
shoes off for
Oh
that.
God, this is gonna.
Shoes.
That's us demonetized immediately. Some good options there, and possibly options for more titles as well. This is if Zoe Stark has her say. She was on 10 Count with Steve Fall, saying that, and this is something that's been echoed a few times in the past few months. More focus on the women's division, away from what Ronda Rousey said about the tag women's division being shallow. Zoe Stark thinks there's room for another singles women's title, saying, "I would love nothing more than to add in like an Intercontinental Women's Championship. I think that would be fun to get that involved with, and then more opportunities for women to be put on TV." I think the issue is always going to be depth.
Yes.
I have no issue. There's no issue, and you should never have an issue with when needed a mid-card women's title, because there isn't one.
Yeah.
But they need the depth in order to do that.
They do. I feel like they've got quite a few women's superstars on the roster at the moment. It's just that we don't see a lot of them utilized on TV. And maybe perhaps that is what is needed, is sort of like a mid-card title for the women's roster, because it feels as though we get storylines, women's storylines on the main roster that don't involve championships, but they often fall by the wayside, or they don't really get the time they deserve to sort of develop too much. So, however, maybe if you do put a mid-card title in there, it would make things feel a little bit more substantial for them.
You think by adding, so you think there's room right now for one?
Yeah, and I know as well, there's always the argument of there's too many titles and everything, but perhaps for the women's roster that does feel a little bit sort of, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it
for the men's
but
roster, that you can argue there are too many titles. You don't have that argument for the women's roster, where you've got a singles title on each brand and then a joint tag title.
But then with the brand split, would you have to make two separate women's mid-card championships, and then maybe you do get into there is too many titles.
This is where the brand splits have never really helped the women's divisions, I find, in WWE. There were, when the first brand split happened, I'm old enough and ugly enough to remember the first brand split, where you had Triple H. Who was the champion when the brand split happened? Was it Triple H? Or was it Hulk Hogan? It was Triple H. Triple H, of course it was, as undisputed champion.
Yeah.
He was floating between the two shows, and Trish Stratus was a floating women's champion. That made sense. I'm not against the idea of, it kind of goes against what I'm saying. I think if with the roster depth you've got now, a floating main women's championship, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I wouldn't say no to it.
Hey, your thoughts down there. Hit us with them. Ending on this. 16 years it's been since we last had this particular gimmick match, but it might be getting dusted off in time for the summer. What are we talking about, Andrew?
Well, we're talking about, well, we'll get into it in a second, won't we? This comes from the Wrestling Observer, and they say that Lesnar versus Rollins 3. Rhodes, Lesnar versus Rhodes 3. I'm everywhere today.
Well, I'd like Lesnar Rollins, but it's not on this occasion.
Not on this occasion, right? Lesnar versus Rhodes 3 will be one of the SummerSlam main events. There's been a lot of talk about adding a stipulation, and one of the ideas is a bull rope match.
Ooh.
That is not official, and there are multiple other ideas for that match on the table, and no final decision has been made.
A Texas bull rope match pitched for SummerSlam.
Yes, please.
Last one was Orton, Dusty Rhodes at the Great American Bash in 2007. Before that, it shows you how rare these matches were. It was Eddie Guerrero, JBL for the WWE title at Great American Bash 2004.
Yep.
Before that, it was in 1999, I think it was. There was a brief period where they wanted The Rock to have his own gimmick match, and the Brahma Bull Rope match was a thing that was pitched, and I think he had one against Triple H on an episode of SmackDown. So they're very rare. I think this is bang on. I think you had this idea.
Yeah,
I had this idea
for the Night of Champions thing. I thought we might have seen it, or at least I pitched it for the Night of Champions, and I was like, it would make sense. Both Cowboy Boys, also obviously Dusty Rhodes synonymous with that match. He had multiple matches of the bull rope variety throughout his career.
That he did.
So to have his little boy do the same thing.
And I like the idea of because the whole feud, at the beginning of the feud, it was Cody calling Brock Lesnar a fake cowboy and all that. And so, hey, look, your chance to be a real cowboy, face me in a Texas bull rope match.
Absolutely. And, you know, Brock wanted a fight as well. And I feel like a fight would be just them tethered to each other. Battering. There's 7 shades of brown out of each other. My goodness.
And it's looking like a match that, as Dave Meltzer has said in the Wrestling Observer this week, is getting set for SummerSlam. We know that Brock Lesnar is scheduled to be at Raw in Baltimore on the 7th of July, then again in Atlanta on the 17th of July, and then at the end of the month in Houston, all on the road to SummerSlam. So there's 3 particular stop-off points where you could easily bring this bull rope match to life in storyline form.
Yeah, definitely.
Up for it. Up for it.
Absolutely. Up for it. Up the SummerSlam.
Up the bull rope.
Up the bull rope.
Up the bull rope to you. And more wrestling news throughout your day at cultaholic.com. Keys.
I love you. Bye.
I bought this prop with me that I never used.
Yeah?
I never found a chance to use it, but happy weekend, everybody.
What does it say there? Das Horn. Das is good.
Got the horn ahead of the weekend.
Oh.
Hey!